Good day everyone. So we will be talking about the economic policy reform. So we are on our week 15 topic. So if we say policy reform, it is a process in which magkaroon ng changes sa ato ang law, sa mga regulation, and even sa institutions. And it will address a problem or achieve a goal such as economic growth, mga environmental protection, or poverty alleviation. But class, if we will talk about the economic reform, so sa economic reform, it broadly indicates necessary structural na mga adjustment sa mga external events nato. It includes the function of countries, budgeting, and also sa paggastos to the level nga parallel sad sa ato ang income sa ato ang bansa. And because of that, ma-reduce nato ang fiscal nga deficits nato. So this requires gradual na reduction or pagbawas nato kay, 'di ba? As what I have said earlier, we have to reduce the fiscal na mga deficits. So if we say deficits, mga kulang nato. So we have to reduce the import and we have to increase the export nga part. So these adjustments also requires market change in order to make economy flexible. So that is the policy reform and also the economic reform. So kadtong June 1991 nakasinati ta og crisis. So the present process of economic reforms was born out of the crisis in the economy nga ni climax jud siya in 1991. So the crisis compelled the government nga mo adapt og new path-breaking na economic policy under which ang mga series of economic reform kay magbuhat sila mga measures for that crisis. So it was initiated with the objective to deal with the crisis and to take the economy on a high growth nga path. So ngano kaya nato kailangan ang economic reform? So first kay para magkaroon ng increase in fiscal deficit, magkaroon ng increase in adverse balance of payment, also with the Gulf na crisis, if ever na magkaroon sad ta og pagbaba sa foreign exchange reserve, pagtaas sa mga presyo, and poor performance of public sector nato diri sa ato ang bansa or even sa other country. So, early crisis management measures. Unsa kaya ang mga pwede nato mabuhat if magkaroon og mga crisis? So, early crisis management measures as trendsetters to the reform process. So, the top and immediate na priority of the government manggod was to establish the economy, bringing the growth of the economy to its normal track and also to win back rather the confidence of the masses in the country. And also maliban sa mga citizen or sa tao diri ang sa to ang country or from the other country, para sad mabalik ang confidence sa international financial community. So the crisis management measures focus largely on fiscal correction. Maliban sa fiscal correction, industrial decontrol, and also pagbalanse sa mga payments. So naatay main features of economic reforms. So first, we have the liberalization, then we have the privatization, and then lastly is the globalization. So sa sa liberalization, it means to free the economy from direct or physical control imposed by the government. So prior pa lang atong 1991, government had imposed several types of controls sa to ang ekonomiya. For example, industrial licensing system nato, price control nato, or financial control sa mga palitonon. Also, ang import license, mga foreign exchange control, restriction on investment sa mga dagko nga mga businesses. And these controls lead to fall in economy growth. So, economic reforms were based on the assumption that ang market kay gi-force nila na the market forces manggod could give guidance no sa tuang ekonomiya in a more effective manner than our government control. So again, ang economic reforms kay gibase siya on assumption lang. So the market forces could guide the economy. So ang sa kuano sa business world jud ang nag-guide sa ekonomiya in a more effective manner kaysa sa um, panukala jud sa to ang government to control the problem. So the liberalization have taken different measures. So first measure na ilahang gi-apply class is ang abolition of industrial licensing and registration. Then panduha na measure na ilahang gibuhat, freedom from expansion and production to industries that increases its investment limit para sa mga small industries or small businesses. And another measure na ilahang gibuhat is that magkaroon og freedom para mo freedom to import capital goods, then freedom to import mga technology, and lastly is the action plan for information technology and software development, especially sa ato ang panahon karon is more on kuana kay no more on technology na jud ang kadaghanan even in farming sa agriculture na perspective, sa even sa mga small businesses no kay kailangan na jud mga technological advances kay para smooth na ang dagan sa mga businesses, mga trabahoon sa agriculture, sa mga public sectors nato and also sa private na mga sectors. And then we have the privatization. So, privatization means allowing the private sector to set up more and more of industries that were previously reserved dapat para sa public sector. So, it can take in three forms. So, first, kay change in ownership. So, class, if magkaroon kaning change in ownership mango, this is the degree of privatization judged by the extent of ownership transferred so from public to private sector. So di ba naadjud tay mga ni usbong na mga cases karon, like for example katong sa mga Marcos na era, like the telecommunication na company nga supposedly it is a government owned na business pero gibaligya siya sa private, and also katong sa tubig and also sa kuryente. So mao na siya ang isa ka under diri as a privatization, the change in ownership. Supposedly ang government ang nagaon, but nagkaroon og judgments nga ang ownership will be transferred from public to a private na sector. So this kind of form napod siya duha ka classification. So naadara ang total nationalization, pwede sa joint venture, so semi nga public, semi nga private, then liquidation and workers cooperative. Then panduhang form under sa privatization is the organizational measure. So sa organizational measures, it includes different measure to limit state control. So we have here the holding company structure or ang leasing ng mga company. And last type of privatization is operational measures. So, naadraa ang mga magkaroon na og autonomy to the operators of the enterprise. So, again, under sa privatization, we have the change in ownership, then organizational measures, and operational measures. So, naatay objective of privatization. So, unsa ang first objective? First is to increase efficiency and competitive power of the enterprises. It also strengthen industrial management, earn more and more foreign currency, make optimum use of resources, and lastly is achieve ang rapid na industrial development of the country. And then we also have the advantages of privatization. So, first advantage niya kay magkaroon og reduction in economic burden, then increase in efficiency, reduction in sense of irresponsibility, scientific management, reduction in political interference, and encouragement of new inventions. Then, disadvantage niya of privatization. So, lack of social welfare, magkaroon og mga class struggle. So, some of that companies manggod will have a kung kuan kilala ka sa lipunan or nakakaangat ka, most probably ikaw jud ang makakuan no, makasulod ani ng mga companies. Pero og kung kuan lang ka, normal people lang ka, kay maglisod ka magtrabaho ng ani ng mga companies. Then increase in inequality, that is related also with the class struggle. And then increase in unemployment and exploitation of weaker na mga section, as what I have said earlier. And then measures adopted for privatization. So, public sector reforms and this investment program. So, before I will proceed to that, kay kuansa na ko kung unsa ang mga different nga measures na gi-adapt for privatization. So, first kay contraction of public sector, nagkaroon sad og disinvestment, then sales of shares of public enterprises, then increases in private sector, then conversion of loans into shares that is not necessary supposedly, then SIC industries and memorandum of understanding. So sa public sector reform ang good, as a public sector as a whole, nagkaroon sila og reformation and disinvestment, as what we can see here. Nagkaroon sila og mga reformation and programs. So ang public sector man good includes all activities or institution funded out of the government's budget, whether dito kanino mga businesses or mga companies are located sa sentro jud mismo or sa state jud mismo. So ang government ang nagagastos nganing public sector. So public sector includes the following: the government department and also government mga companies. Then irrigation and power projects, railways, banking, insurance, financial and other services. So daghan pa kay sa services ang government. Then sa growing sector against the public sector manggod, nagkaroon sila conflict between the financial and social objectives nila. Nagkaroon sad og problema sa mga losses or low rate of return on investment. Then lack of professionalism in management, and time and cost overruns in their new projects. And last nga problem na ilahang na encounter is ang operational inefficiency nila, no, lalo na sa mga government sector or the public sector. Then the public sector reform, so with the problem na ilahang na-encounter, so nagkaroon og reformation sa public sector. So first reformation na ilahang gibuhat is that ang mga public sector units kay mo refocus na pud sila sa ilahang objective. Then magkaroon sila og financial and operational autonomy, restructuring sa SIC units nila, then privatization through these investments, and protection of public sector unit workers' interests. So, if we say disinvestment, mango, the disinvestment program class towards greater privatization of the economy, it was launched in the year 1991, padulong og 1992. So, 1 year duration lang siya. So, with the announcement of the new industrial policy kadtong August 1991, pag-boom sa crisis sa June, no, nagkaroon dayon og industrial policy by August 1991, and it is an ongoing process even today actually. So, it involves sales of minority stake in a few public sector units, not all, but some lang na mga public sector units. So, nagkaroon ng mga strategic sales, initial public offerings, and right offers. So, between August 1991 and March 2003, in some companies, they underwent the disinvestment nga process. So, unsa ang mga issues nga related sa disinvestment? So, first issue nga na-encounter is that nagkaroon og valuation of public sector unit. Panduha, ang mga method na gigamit sa disinvestment. Then, pangatlo, the extent of disinvestment. And last nga issue na ilahang na-encounter kay nagkaroon og issue concerning sa labor or pagkaroon og daghan kayog unemployment sa ekonomiya. So that are the measures adopted for privatization. So for the globalization aspect, if we say globalization man god, it is defined as a process associated with increasing openness, growing economic independence, and deepening economic integration in the world economy. So, with the globalization class, magkaroon na og pagbawas sa trade barriers nato globally. Then magkaroon na og free flow of capital. Maliban sa free flow of capital, magkaroon sa og free flow of technology. Then free movement of the technology if nanay free flow of technology. So, mao na siya ang mga magiging advantage no of the globalization. Then, unsa ang process of globalization? So, first stage is ang domestic company kay mo export sa foreign countries through the dealers or distributors of home country diri sa tua. Then, stage 2, so from mag-export ta sa mga foreign countries. So, pangduha kay ang domestic company export to foreign country directly on its own. Then, stage 3, the domestic company become an international na company by establishing production and marketing operation in different key foreign na countries. Then, stage 4, the company replicates a foreign company in the foreign country by having all the facilities including the research and development, full-fledged human resources. Then, ang last stage of process of globalization kay the company becomes a true foreign company by serving the needs of foreign na mga customers just like the host country. So, from being a domestic company with padulong sa pagiging foreign company. So, kay mag-branch out man na ang mother company. So, from being a domestic na company hantod sa mo magkaroon na og expansion, no, na motindog na sila og mga company sa other country for mas dali nga distribution sa ilahang produkto for lesser expenses or malesen ang ilahang cost, magtukod sila sa other country. Then with that situation, mahulog na siya as foreign company. And then we also have different types of globalization. So first is the globalization of markets. So what is meant by the globalization of markets? So it is the merging sa local market into one huge nga marketplace. So unsa kaya ang mga product markets that tend to be the most global? So unsa kaya tong mga produkto, no, na ginatangkilik jud siya in terms of globalization. So first nga product kay kanang ginagamit nato mostly sa different industries, mga raw materials, and even other commodities. And then globalization of production, so it is a firm that are basing individual production that implies firms, and also it that also base, or they are also basing individual productive activities at the optimal world location for the particular na mga activities. So ngano kaya ang production system kay ginaglobalize na nato siya? Production system man gud are being globalized kay tungod ang firms find that it is more profitable man gud to send production to places that are the best in the world in the particular nga activity. Then we also have the globalization of technology. So it is a technological globalization that can be defined as the increasing speed of technological diffusion across the global economy. So it refers to the spread of technologies around the globe, and particularly from developed to developing nations. So with the technological advances, if we say technological advances magod, these are the kuano, especially sa to ang panahon karon, we are using mobile phones nga na mga computers, mga laptop, in businesses and our daily na mga ginabuhat, especially karon pandemic. So nagasalig jud ta sa to ang mga technological advances. So technological advances in areas like mobile phones can lead to competition, especially sa situation na to karon. Magkaroon jud ang mga mobile phone companies og competition. With that competition, magkaroon og paglaban-laban sa pag-lower sa ilahang prices, and even mga concurrent na mga improvements in related areas such as sa ilahang camera, sa ilahang internet connection, kay dati from 2G na mo 3G hantod sa, I'm not sure kung may 4 ba, 4G, or karon sa pinaka-latest is 5G ang pinakakusog ata. I'm not sure kung napay mas taas sa 5G karon. So that is the technological advances in sa area sa mobile phones. Then globalization increases international investing, or the globalization of investment. So over period of time, mga good class, these practices result in increased na cultural similarities between countries and increasingly connected economies that have more mutual interest and challenges. So globalization and international investment are tied together and lead into one another as companies act and internationally by increasing their international investment out of mutual interest. And with that, we have the need to stay internationally competitive. So, companies benefit from pricing differences in different markets for it's either sa labor or sa supply nga aspect. So, ang globalization manggod, gina-force niya ang connection sa ekonomiya to continue to invest in each other kay para maprotektahan nila ang ilahang economic health, and with that maka-acquire sila og bag-ong pagkakitaan. So that is the another type of globalization, the globalization of investment. So again, we have four types of globalization: globalization of markets, globalization of production, globalization of technology, and lastly is the investment. And for our last topic for today, measures taken for globalization. So unsa tong mga things na gibuhat nila for the globalization. So, first measure na ilahang gibuhat is reduction of import na duty. So, they focus on the export nga perspective. Then, encouragement of foreign investment. Then, reducing custom duty and devaluation of currency. And lastly is the partial convertibility. So, I think that is all our discussion for today. So, a little kuan lang no, recall sa to ang topic for today. So we have discussed the policy reform and economic reform. Then katong nahitabo na crisis of June 1991. With that kay niusbong ang economic reform or the process of economic reform, and then we also discussed the need or nganong kailangan nato ang economic reform. Then unsa tong mga early crisis management na ato ang gibuhat sa as a trend setter to the reform process. Then naatay tulo ka main features of economic reform: the liberalization, privatization, then globalization. Then unsa tong mga measure na gibuhat for liberalization, the definition also of the liberalization, and after that we discussed the definition of privatization to mga different forms of the privatization. So we have the change in ownership, the organizational measures and operational measure. So, under sa change in ownership, naatay total nationalization, joint venture, liquidation, then workers' cooperative. And under sa organizational measure, naadara ang holding company structure and katong leasing. Then, we also have the objective of privatization, the advantages and disadvantages of privatization. Then measures na gi-adapt sa privatization. And lastly is the globalization. So ang globalization manggod maka-help siya og reduce sa trade barriers, magkaroon og free flow sa capital og technology. So with the free flow of technology, magkaroon og free movement of technology. Then gidiscuss nato tong different stages sa globalization kung sa iyang proseso. So natay stage 1 hangtod stage 5, and also the different types of globalization: the market, the production, the technology, and investment. And lastly kay katong mga measures na gibuhat sa globalization. So I think that is all for today. So if you have questions and clarifications regarding sa tong discussion for today, you may start asking now. So thank you so much for listening and have a nice day.